Hey guys, welcome back to Vince-Vell Customs. Today we are going to start our PrototypeZ Street Fighter Sagat resin model kit. Now, when you get the kit, it's basically you have to do prep work. So we're going to start off the video with doing all the prep work. Prep work is kind of boring, it's kind of a pain. You know, once you get into the painting, that's more fun, but you really want to prep it and you want to make it good. So first thing we're going to do is we have to clean the kit. It's got oil on it. For the mold release. So mold release meaning that they spray like an oil type chemical into the mold and you pour in resin, so this way the resin doesn't stick to the mold. So it's got oil on there and you have to clean that off first. You have to get all that off because even though you can sand it and then prime it, the primer won't stick to the resin because the oil is there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this in the kitchen, not the kitchen sink, actually the bathroom sink, because that's pretty much all I have. Put the pieces in there. And basically I'll show you what I use and we'll get it all set up. There's going to be a couple parts to these videos, you know, it's prep work, how I plan to pin it, keep it together, and then how I paint it and go from there. So bear with me, going to be a couple videos and hopefully help a lot of people out who want to get into this and do it on their own. So let's get all set up in the bathroom and I'll show you how I clean up the kit. Sink, and we're going to start cleaning them off. Now, I understand that it's pretty much crammed in here. You don't have to do it in your sink. You can do it in anything. You can get a bucket. You can get, if you have a slop sink, which is bigger, you can do it in the kitchen sink and all that stuff. But I do it in the bathroom because then I can just turn around, throw it in the tub and let it dry, and then put it on the towel later. So basically what I like to do is I have an old toothbrush, and I also have this 3M sandpaper. I like to use this too. You can also use steel wool if you want. You know, you can do stuff like that, and all you need is some Dawn detergent. Basically, you want to get all the oil off because you can see water's kind of beading on this stuff, and it just goes right away. You don't want to put anything in here that's fragile that might break or snap, like the flames. They're clear resin, and they got those little pieces that will crack or stuff, so those I'll do separately. But since these are the biggest pieces and there's nothing in here that's really gonna like snap with some pressure, some things might break, like edges of this could break and snap, like this kind of cracked a little bit here, but that stuff I can fix easily. So basically what you want to do is get some warm water going, throw some Dawn in your hand, just get some suds going. And if you got it in your hand too, you can actually, you know, rub it around a piece. And then you take your toothbrush and you can just scrub them down. And you want to make sure after you scrub them down you rinse too, because you don't want the soap staying on it. But this is just pretty much giving you an idea what to do. And if you have a steel wool pad or this type of pad, you can actually just sand it down a little bit too. This helps pretty much get it all going. Now you don't want to sand any details down, so you don't want to use anything that's super rough. You want to just, this is very fine and soft, and I've used this on other stuff, so it's kind of worn down. So this just helps scrape off the oil and any kind of residue. If there's any kind of grooves or hard to reach places, get your toothbrush. And then you kind of want to rinse it afterwards. Now, still beads a little bit, but it's still fairly wet and it's not as slimy, so the oil's getting off. And then once you dry it down and you handle it some more, it'll come out. So basically this is the process of cleaning up your kit. You need to do it with every single piece. Just gotta get in there and get it all done. If you need to use more soap, you can use more soap. But that's the process. So what I'll do is pretty much clean all these up, get them all nice and dried up and everything. Like running my finger over now, it's still very slimy. If the water is getting too slimy with the oil and stuff, just, you know, mix up some more. But so I'm gonna get all these done, and then we'll get them all dried up, and then from there we'll move on to the next step. So that's pretty much cleaning your kit. Make sure you do a good job, get it all nice and clean, get it nice and dried up afterwards, and then you'll be ready to do next steps. Alright guys, so now we're on the clear resin. Clear resin still has oil stuff on it, and you really want to get this clean if you're going to use any kind of clear paints on this. Now, you don't want to use any kind of sandpaper when you're doing on this clear resin, because what you're going to start to do is you'll make it cloudy. So if you do that, then when you go to spray the clears on it, you're not going to get any of that clear translucent. It's going to start turning cloudy, and it'll just kind of look whitish. So when you do clear resin, this is completely different. Don't use sandpaper. Only use a toothbrush, something like this, because this won't actually grind it up. This is kind of just brushing it and going from there. And you want to be very careful, because as you can see, these pieces can actually snap on you. And if you're not careful and you have this in the water with everything else and you're moving stuff around, snap, 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 you pull it out and you wonder what happened. So you want to be very careful with these. Now for me personally, I'm not actually doing these clear. I'm actually going to chrome these. So for me, I can actually sand these because it's going to be primed and painted anyway. So it doesn't really matter what I'm doing. But for you guys, if you want to keep it clear, remember, just use a toothbrush, or and not something that's very harsh. You know, buff it up, whatever you want to do. So you just want to be very careful with this. But pretty much the same thing. Get your soap going, get it in your hands, get it all around the piece. Be careful. So as you can see, it kind of, when water gets on it, getting it off, you get to clear it a little bit more, because it does have that oil on it. So you just want to go nice and light, get in there, get around. Anything over here too. Don't just drop them in. Like I said, be very careful. These pieces can snap on you. Not just because it's clear resin, because this is resin period. So even, you know, colored resin, stuff like that will snap. So be careful. Like I said, I'm going to be chroming this one, so it doesn't matter if I actually sand it up. Now I'm not really familiar with clear resin too much, but I think there is a way where you can actually buff it. So I think if you get some kind of like buffing material, you can actually buff out the clear resin a little bit more. I know some people have done that. So that's, you just gotta be careful with that. Just so you know, this is like your most fragile part of the whole entire kit. So what I'll do is I'll clean that up more, I'll clean up the base, and then we'll go from there. Alright guys, so here's Sagat. He's in the process of drying up now. So basically, after you wash him, you get all that residue off. Don't run and prime him right away. You want to make sure he's dry. If you don't do that, and you prime him and you miss a water bead somewhere within a crevice, what happens is the primer goes around the water. It doesn't suck up the water, it doesn't blend with it, it actually goes around it and it creates a shell, like a bubble. And once that water actually starts to dry, that shell is just sitting there and you might not notice it. So if you go to sand before you actually, or prep them up before you actually go to paint them, or you just run the paint right away, you'll paint and all of a sudden the airbrush might push that in, or you might actually paint over that, and down the line when you're handling him, you'll push it in and you're like, what happened? What is this? It was a bubble because of the water bead. So you got to make sure he is dry. But anyway, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to let this sit overnight, or for a couple days when I get a chance to get back to him. I'll actually start fixing all the errors. Now there is a couple errors here and there. There's nothing major compared to with a lot of kits I've had in the past. But let's see if we can See these little bubbles there and those little crevices? Those are errors. Now, errors meaning what it is in the casting, after you cast so many times, when you pull the piece, the resin out of the casting starts to deteriorate. So if you're not using, I guess what it is, metal castings, I don't know how, or ceramic castings, if you're using like the rubber castings, they deteriorate after maybe 25 to 30 castings, depending on how, you know, how good the rubber is. If it's a cheaper rubber, I think it's less. I don't know how it works, but that's just little bubbles and little errors, and that's very easy to fix. If you have a Dremel tool, you can actually just go in there and Dremel it out. But I'll get back to that when I start patching them all up. What I like to do is I like to plan my attack. I like to make sure I know what I'm going to do. So my goal is, with this kit, I am going to drill every single joint. Basically, I want him to be completely solid. I don't want to be any gluing. So I'll actually paint him up. There's two options. I can actually drill here, all over. I can paint it. Then I could throw in some Aves or Magic Sculpt with a metal rod and some glue around the edges and just get them in there, and it'll be nice and taut, you know. Or you can actually glue him all together with some Aves, fix all the Aves up in crevices, and then do the old traditional way where you paint them up and you mask them off with silly putty. Now that's the way I like to work. I don't like to, you know, paint them up and then glue them together and that's it. I really want him to be solid. I want him to be like a real good resin piece, because, you know, if you glue like this, if you don't use really good glue, you know, you can actually just lift them up and it might snap on you. Not snapping where it broke, but just to glue it and really hold it well enough. So that's what I'm doing. But I'm actually going to be getting some magnets, and then I'm going to actually magnet the arms, because once the flames are in the arms and they go here, for shipping and moving it around, that's kind of a little bit dangerous to me, because that's a lot of weight. I'd rather have the magnet within the arm so I can just magnet them in and pop them out. It's a lot of extra work, but this is what I'm doing. And I'm also going to magnet each of the heads, so this way each head is removable. Now, if you're got the kit and you don't like one head and you're never going to display it, you can actually just take the head, set it up, use Aves, and make sure it's never going to move. That's up to you. You know, it's your kit, you do what you want. And if you have an extra head, you could just probably, you know, find somebody on a forum or on eBay and just sell off the head and get a couple bucks back. You know, it's up to you. It's your kit. Or you can leave it in the box, and if you sell off that line, you get it to somebody and they got an extra head. It's whatever you want to do. And then the last thing I'm thinking what I'm going to do is, even though he is keyed into the base with the feet are actually keyed in there, I actually like the idea of pinning one foot, probably this one here, because this one's longer. Wait, hold on. Yeah. This one's, oh, well, I'll figure it out. Yeah, it goes like that. Oh, okay, so I got two options. I like to actually pin it where a pin would be into the foot, so you can actually pop them in and out. But what I'll do is I'll piece them together first and then see if I even need to do that. He might actually just fit pretty well. So maybe actually I'll put magnets in the base and magnets in the feet, so he just magnetizes in and out of the base. So that might be the better option. So this is how I do the process, figure out the best option, how everything works, and go from there. So let him dry up, and then what I'll do is we'll go into the garage and I'll start fixing out the areas and showing how I drill them up and how I prep them up. And then once I get them all prepped up, I'll show you how I put them together. And then after that, we'll do the paint up. And pretty much that's the process. So hopefully you guys like this. Hopefully it works out and it gives you guys some ideas. And we'll be back after I get everything set up.